I wonder if it's possible to feel unalone and loved without undergoing a change in consciousness. I remember a period in my life after boarding school and military service when, for the first time, I was turned loose to my own devices, i.e., I was free to go and come as I pleased. No longer was my daily schedule regulated from above by teachers, parents, or sergeants. No longer was my room, board, travel, and entertainment paid for. If I didn't have a job, I wouldn't eat. If I didn't get out of bed in the morning and go to work, they'd evict me. If I didn't go out in search of friendship and sex, I would remain friendless and unrelieved. Of course, there was always the people at work, but my first two jobs in photography labs kept me in a dark room 6 hours a day. Lots of time for fantasizing and daydreaming about why I was miserable and what I might do to turn my life around, but not much for pursuing relationships or expanding my social life. It's that way for many. Witness the following excerpt from a BBC production, The Loneliness Experiment. I'm very good at being chatty. I can talk to anyone, but that doesn't mean I'm able to have those lasting relationships with people, says Michelle. You can be in a group and it can be intimidating because you're conscious of not letting people get to know the real you. I would say I've always had an element of feeling lonely ever since I was a teenager. I've always felt a little bit different and separate from large groups of friends, but in the last 5 years, it's crept in more. Michelle has experienced anxiety and depression, which she finds can amplify her loneliness because she finds it hard to articulate negative emotions. If I'm in a group, I often find myself saying, "I'm great," when people ask me how I am. It's almost like an out-of-body experience because I can hear myself saying these positive things when I'm thinking about how I struggled to get out of bed yesterday. It's the loneliness of knowing how you feel in your own head and never being able to tell people. So I enrolled in George Washington University, and instead of nothing and no one, there was suddenly too much. If I wasn't seeing or going out with someone somewhere, I felt alone and unloved. Close to the university, at 25th Street and Pennsylvania Avenue, across the street from St. Stephen Martyr Church, I had a great one-bedroom apartment for $90 a month. Now, 50 years later, it's the Avenue Suites, Georgetown, another classic Washington row house bites the dust. Parties and a series of girlfriends, minimalist yet tasteful furniture. The apartment was equidistant from my two favorite Pennsylvania Avenue hangouts, Brownlee's to the right and the one step down to the left. Hotspots I'd repair to for a round or several rounds of drinks if I wasn't seeing someone. At last call, I'd lurch my way home from Brownlee's in the snow through a messy construction site. The Washington Circle underpass was being built at the time. I was feuding with St. Stephen's, their noisy bells waking me at early hours, so I'd put a large speaker on my windowsill that blared Thelonious Monk at the ringing bells. It's the music you hear in the background, by the way. At one party, I suddenly had the thought that all the guests were having more fun than I was, so I ordered everyone out. That was my life. Too much to drink or smoke, and a feeling that I was missing something, that somewhere people I knew were having more fun than I was. And so it came to pass, getting tossed out on the street. I was having a bacon, egg, and English muffin brunch fast one morning when the door started being knocked on. I opened it, and 3 burly men with moving equipment brushed by me and started packing everything up. I and my household and my tasty breakfast were out on the street in less than 10 minutes. It's not that I couldn't have raised the $90. I just didn't want to be bothered. By the time I came back with a borrowed truck, most of my possessions had disappeared. The story made the bar circuit with me for a week until I grew sick of it and sick of my life. Within 5 years, I had moved to Paris, practicing yoga and meditating. When Kundalini awakened 2 years after I'd been there, I felt immediately unbounded. It had always been me and everybody else. And why couldn't I be as happy as everyone else seemed to be? No anxiety. It had faded away. No, why was I so mixed up? I no longer was. I hadn't had to work at getting adjusted. By spilling my guts out to a psych analyst, Kundalini had effected an organic change. The physical actions of yoga and meditation had opened up the metaphysical. My consciousness had changed, and along with it, my being. Washing the dishes became the same as going to a party. Sure, there was a long adjustment. Learning to live with Kundalini is a long process, affecting the somatic, the metabolic, as well as the emotional and the cognitive. However, I was no longer spiraling downward. In a Terry Gross interview entitled Cult Icon John Waters on Breaking Taboos and Embracing Villains from her NPR show Fresh Air, maverick filmmaker John Waters offers an alternate take on unhappiness, and I offer it here as a kind of coda.
No, early in your career, you said that your work is really about the sadness normal people feel because they're not involved in show business.
Well, somebody said that was the snottiest thing I ever said. I didn't mean it to be snotty, but I believe that most everybody secretly imagines themselves in show business, and every day on their way to work, they're a little bit depressed because they're not. People are sad they're not famous in America.
Living with Kundalini for over 50 years requires ingenuity, adaptability, and guts. The changes one goes through are never predictable and cannot be taken for granted. To weather the changes Kundalini brings about, the strains and stresses your body undergoes, you need all the first-hand knowledge you can gather. Kundalini is an alchemical metamorphosis in a single lifetime, an evolutionary miracle. If you're a Buddhist, you can be converted to another belief system. You can change your mind and become a Christian or a Jew. You cannot be converted to Kundalini any more than you can be converted to an orgasm or heart attack. They are biological processes, not cults or belief systems. You don't believe in the physiological channels, chakras, nadis, or energy centers known to Kundalini adepts? They are fact. Someday science will acknowledge this, just as a growing number of people that Kundalini has visited now do. 364 pages of first-hand Kundalini experience and knowledge. Kundalini and your health. Kundalini in your relationships. Kundalini and your job. Living with Kundalini. Pain and discomfort due to Kundalini. Changes in mood in Kundalini. Emotional stability in Kundalini. When Kundalini isn't wanted. Social media and Kundalini. Art, music, and Kundalini. All in one book.